Okay, this is the Battle of Sesmylspruit, or 6 Mile Stream, which was the second in the series of 2 battles for Pretoria. The day before, on the 3rd of June, 1900, General French had set off to the west to try and encircle Pretoria and cause its collapse, but he was ambushed at a place called Kalkierville, which today is opposite the Lion and Safari Park on the way to Broadhurst. So he was ambushed and held back there, but Lord Roberts and his main army advanced northwards in a direct line towards Pretoria. And here you see 6 Mile Spruit, or 6 Mile Stream, which today is better known as the Hennips River. And this is a modern 1 in 50,000 map with the various movements of the British noted on it. This map was drawn up by my friend and fellow historian, Chris Ash. And you can see here the main railway line to Pretoria. And this was the main advance. And Lord Roberts decided to attack frontally at a place called Swartkops, just across the Hennips River, with his Imperial Yeomanry in the front. And Swartkop was actually captured on the morning of the 4th of June by the mounted infantry at about 10:30 in the morning. And he very quickly got his artillery up onto the top of Swartkop and started shelling the forts, especially Skanskop, around Pretoria, and also the railway station at Pretoria. However, the main action was to happen to the west. There was Broadwood with his cavalry moving roughly where Pelindaba is now, and Nexa, the old nuclear facility. And in between, there are these hills in the Skurverberg, which are very high, very easily defensible, and you can see the Boers were entrenched along the Skurverberg. So this is what Swartkop looks like. And it's quite a formidable hill, and there's a ford across the river through which the British passed. There we go. This is what the ford looks like today. It's actually a very nice place. It's a beautiful park-like setting, and it's at the Royal Elephant Hotel. So this is the British Yeomanry crossing under fire at about 9:30 in the morning. They took the Boers by surprise. The Boer artillery, however, was quite way behind Swartkop, and so they crossed fairly easily and managed to take the hill without too much hassle. However, the 21st Infantry Brigade, and I'm looking now south from 6 Mile Stream, or Sesmylspruit, and from this position here, the 21st Brigade and the 19th Brigade crossed the 6 Mile Spruit to the west of Swartkop. So here we are. The 21st Brigade crossed and stayed there where I showed you the photograph, and the 19th Brigade under General Smith Dorian then approached Skurverberg, where the Boers were entrenched. And this is actually on the far western side where Broadwood crossed, hoping to outflank the Boers. And this is the kind of country that he had to work through. This is an old lime kiln, which is still in existence, and this is the on the Boer right flank, the British left flank, and Broadhurst wasn't able to do very much except establish a guard, and this is the house where he bivouacked overnight on the 4th of June, and it was just across the river. But this is where the main action took place, and it took place, oddly enough, almost opposite a very notorious place called Vlakplaas, which featured quite significantly in the War of Liberation in the 1970s, 1980s. This is the notorious Vlakplaas. And I'm looking south, and to my back is the Hennips River, or Sesmylspruit. And this is what it looks like across the road. So the 19th Brigade crossed the river, and they set up their artillery here. And they had almost 30 guns. They had a number of Royal Field Artillery. So it was the 74th, the 75th, the 18th, the 62nd, and the 84th batteries of Royal Field Artillery. And they were shelling across the Skurverberg to the north, on the western side of Pretoria. And this is what it looks like a little bit closer. And it's quite recognizable because this is in fact an old shooting range. And this is a shooting range where I trained in the South African Air Force in 1972. That's when our fighter command actually flew Zeppelins. No, that's just a joke. But anyway, this is the old shooting range. And this was the key position during the Battle of Sesmylspruit. And here we have the Royal Field Artillery, one gun, which is one of 6 in a battery. And these men are in full dress uniform, posing for the camera. So this is where they were. We're now looking west towards the hills in the Skurverberg, where Broadwood and his cavalry had reached the edge of the Boer right flank and had bivouacked overnight. If we look to the east, this is Swartkorp, where the main British army had crossed the river and the Imperial Yeomanry had taken the hill. The British had put their big guns, their heavy guns, up on the top of Swartkorp and were shelling Pretoria. So there we have Lord Roberts, Swartkorp, and they were shelling Pretoria, Skanskorp and Klapperkorp, and of course the railway station. And under General Ian Hamilton, Smith Dorrien was this side of Pretoria on the western side, and there you can see where General Broadwood was with his cavalry. Very interesting, this is the order of battle, and this is the Mounted Infantry Division, the 1st Mounted Infantry under Hutton. And there was a very interesting corps, the 2nd Mounted Infantry Corps under de Lisle. Now, Colonel de Lisle became very famous during the First World War. He was a very accomplished general, eventually became a field marshal. And he had met General Allenby, who was also a colonel during the Anglo-Boer War, and they became great friends. But under him, you can see that the bulk of his force was made up of the New South Wales Mounted Rifles and the West Australian Mounted Infantry. And these were the guys who achieved the breakthrough. Just to the west of where the artillery was, there's this very steep hill. So Colonel de Lisle ordered his Australians to dismount, and somehow they made their way up the hill, up the steep hill, and there you can see a track going up to the top of the hill, and they totally surprised the Boers. And this is very much, it's not this particular battle, but you can see these are also Australians, and they've totally surprised some Boers, and they took a couple of pom-poms and their wagons. And therefore they were able to outflank the Boers from the west of Pretoria. And they advanced to a place that we now know as Proclamation Hill. And here we have Colonel de Lisle, who now was a famous general during the First World War when this photograph was taken. And as I said, he was friends with Colonel Allenby, who also became a famous general, and they supported one another during the First World War. And in fact, when Allenby was ordered to take Jerusalem, he said, but so many attempts have failed, I'll never do this. It was de Lisle who encouraged his old friend, and he said, you can do it. He said, in fact, it's written in the Bible that you can do it. And this is a photograph of General Allenby entering Jerusalem on the 11th of December, 1917, through the Jaffa Gate. So it was all over. De Lisle sent an envoy on the evening of the 4th, after he'd ensconced himself near Proclamation Hill, and he sent Lieutenant Watson to meet with General Botha. And he found General Botha eventually, and this poor lieutenant hadn't eaten for about 36 hours, and he was starving. And Botha's English wife actually gave him a nice sandwich. It was probably the best sandwich he ever had eaten in his life. And so Botha said, I want peace, I want negotiations to start, but it was another ploy. And he sent his military secretary back, and this whole party, under the escort of Lieutenant Watson, who joined up again with Colonel de Lisle, and they went, and they, about 11 o'clock at night, they woke up General Roberts, and they said, look, General Botha is wanting peace terms, and here is his military secretary, but he needs an armistice. And the armistice was very, very important, because it was granted by Lord Roberts, who actually only marched into Pretoria the next day, and he raised the Union Jack in Church Square only at 2 o'clock the next day. But here are the first British troops entering Pretoria. This is Pretoria Station. They took a couple of shots at the last departing train, which was full of Boer commandos. And of course, the clever General Botha had used the time, firstly to get the gold away out of Pretoria, and also to get the remaining cannon and commandos out of Pretoria. And these are the first troops that actually marched into Pretoria. And poor old Lord Roberts, he was so determined to be nice to the Boers, hoping that after Johannesburg, Pretoria would surrender easily and that the Boers would sue for peace. And of course, Botha had said, yes, I want peace. But it was only 5 days later when the stalled negotiations for peace, finally, Roberts lost his patience and he realized that Botha was really buying time. After the fall of Pretoria, he could only muster 2,000 commandos to man the next defensive line, which was Diamond Hill, Donkerhoek. And by the time Lord Roberts woke up and advanced his army towards Diamond Hill on the 11th of June, Botha had assembled 8,000 commandos along a front of about 40 kilometers. So again, Lord Roberts had missed the opportunity to crush the Boer army. So this is how the Battle of 6 Mile Strait ended.